OK. Bonjour, Madame et Messieurs. C'est un honneur d'être ici, sur la colline du Parlement, avec le député Tochor, qui a si gracieusement soutenu notre pétition pour inclure le nucléaire dans le cadre des obligations vertes. Thank you, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here on Parliament Hill with MP Tochor, who has sponsored our our petition to include nuclear within the Green Bond. Corey, maybe I'll give you a chance to say a couple words, and I will make our case.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Keefer, and it's an honor to be here today. I'm honored to sponsor this petition that I believe the doctor is going to go over some of the metrics on how popular this petition was, and it really truly shows the support around Canadians for nuclear. And it's an important time in our history of our country and the cause of lowering emissions, and we know the strength that nuclear has on lowering emissions, good for our economy, good for our country, and I'll let Dr. Keefer carry on with his remarks, and then I'll have some closing comments for everybody after as well. Dr. Keefer?
Wonderful. So as Mr. Tochor was saying, this petition, which argues for the inclusion of nuclear within the Green Bond framework, has been very popular amongst Canadians. It is in the top 3% of all 465 petitions that have been launched in this 44th parliamentary session, and number one in economy and finance. This issue seems to have touched a nerve amongst Canadians, and I think there's a good reason for that. It's out of step with the science, and it actually lumps nuclear technology in alongside the so-called sin stocks: gambling, tobacco, firearms, alcohol. Now, why is this such a problem, and why should the Canadian government and really all political parties enthusiastically embrace nuclear energy? Well, it's not controversial amongst the scientists. There is a scientific consensus. In the IPCC, all four of the illustrative decarbonization pathways call for an increase in nuclear energy. We have the evidence right here at home with this Made in Canada climate solution. We achieved what's been called the greatest greenhouse gas reduction in North America with the nuclear-powered Ontario coal phase-out. This had dramatic improvements not only for the climate, but as a physician, something I care deeply about, for air pollution and for health. We had 53 smog days before the coal phase-out occurred, and we got that down to 0. Again, it was nuclear energy which replaced coal in Ontario. Another reason that it's so important that the Green Bond include nuclear is a little-known fact. Canadian uranium, which is used in our domestic nuclear fleet and around the world, displaces the equivalent of 1/3 of Canada's national emissions on an annual basis. This is a very misunderstood area and I think deserves a lot more attention. Another element, again, that's really unique to the ingenuity of Canadian technology and our engineering is that our CANDU reactor actually produces medical isotopes. And these isotopes enable modern healthcare. They sterilize 40% of the world's single-use medical instruments, enabling a sterile environment in healthcare. We produce enough cobalt-60 to sterilize 20 billion pieces of PPE, which have been vital during this pandemic. The world is turning towards nuclear energy at this time. The EU has found itself in a very difficult position, partially because of nuclear phase-out policies in places like Germany. They have hooked themselves up to Russian natural gas and are financing Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine to the tune of hundreds of millions of euros every day. Canada has a unique opportunity to export not only our uranium but also our nuclear technology and take over this key market in Europe and help them to become energy independent and free of that relationship. A few more things I'd like to mention here. Nuclear is really domestically the ultimate economic stimulus. We have a 96% made in Canada supply chain with our CANDU nuclear technology. Every dollar that we invest in CANDU returns $1.40 in GDP. And we saw in Ontario a truly just transition for fossil fuel workers working in coal plants who are able to get similarly high quality jobs in the trades and in STEM, but with even better occupational health characteristics, leaving a dusty coal environment for a clean nuclear plant. We have very few options for our climate goals and for decarbonization. We have freeloaded on the infrastructure that our forefathers and foremothers built for us in terms of our hydroelectricity in this country. And hydroelectricity is really tapped out. We don't have much more options. We know that we need to double our electric grid in order to achieve our net zero goals. And this is staggering, the amount of infrastructure we need to build. The equivalent of 113 Site C dams or 96 large Canada reactors. Bonds built that key energy infrastructure of our country. Bonds built our hospitals, our roads, our bridges, and our power plants. And bonds will build the basis of our carbon-free future, that infrastructure that is so vital. And that is why it is truly such an affront that the Green Bond Framework excludes nuclear energy, again, alongside the so-called sin stocks. And that is why, again, over 10,000 Canadians have signed on to this petition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Keefer. And just to conclude on my remarks, the Liberal government is very good with words, but terrible at action. We have a budget tomorrow that it would be a prime time for them to follow through with their words and support for this important sector. And time will tell if there's actual support for the sector. We need to increase our utilization of nuclear to different varying statistics look at between 98% and 500% increase in nuclear in Canada if we're going to be able to meet our international commitments. Nuclear is the only way we're going to lower emissions. It is a way that we can lower emissions but also help our economy. And Dr. Keefer talked about the supply chain on the CANDU. A lot of excitement about the potential for SMRs. And what we're hearing from the Liberals is crickets of actual support for this sector. I believe a little bit in their caucus, probably half of them that are lukewarm to the idea. Some of them that even have nuclear facilities in their ridings are very quiet. And we'll see actions speak louder than words, and we'll see here shortly if that portion of the caucus holds any sway. There's the half that are lukewarm, and the other half of the Liberal caucus, I think they've got concerns about using the microwave. And unfortunately, with the political realities in Ottawa these days, they're propped up by the NDP that are even more hostile to this clean energy. So I don't have that much hope in swaying their belief that they can have reductions without nuclear. The science is clear. The science is on the side that we need more nuclear, and we need a government that follows through with action, not just words on this important file. In my province, the Saskatchewan, I'm proud of the uranium that is mined, which is mined with the highest grade in the world, with the largest percentage of First Nations involvement in the employment and extraction of that resource, which helps in northern Saskatchewan. It helps the country. We talked about the CANDU supply chain that is already exists, and that touches our economy in every province. So we are asking for a rethink from this government on excluding uranium. And we're asking them to get serious tomorrow in this budget and support nuclear in a way that they have yet to show courage in doing so. Because it is important for us to reach our emission reductions, and nuclear is the only way that we're able to. With that, I'll conclude my remarks and open it up to any questions that might be out there.
We'll now start the question period. As usual, one question, one follow-up. I invite everybody on Zoom who has a question to use the raise hand function. Once again, on Zoom, if you have any questions, please the raise hand function. First question, Palak Mangat, Parliament Today.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
It's a little quiet.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thanks for taking our questions. I think part of the government's response so far has been that the exclusion is in line with international standards. And I know that you referenced, this idea of sin stocks. Can you speak to sort of what your response to that would be? We were hearing that some advisors were sort of essentially told the government the framework will not be supporting programs that have unambiguous environmental benefits. So I just wanted to get your reaction on that. And then I do have a follow-up, but I'll leave that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the government's line on this is actually in stark contradiction to modern green finance. The EU, 27 member states, just spent 2 years forming their sustainable finance taxonomy. And they, after careful consideration, obviously this is a politicized issue, but after careful scientific study by the Joint Research Committee, they decided to include nuclear in that taxonomy. And that's really, I think, the world's largest effort so far at examining this issue. Canada needs to lead on this, not be the kind of tail wagging behind. There is a real contradictory position here because the Liberal government is distributing some innovation funds to advanced and small modular reactors, which is great. But you can't do that and at the same time essentially say nuclear is a sin, especially with its contributions to climate change, clean air, and as I was mentioning, something that affects me personally in my workplace in the hospital, medical isotopes, which are incredibly undervalued, but a really important contribution from our CANDU technology.
Thanks. Can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, just to follow up on that as well. I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Keefer. I think it's Mr. Champagne who's also recently said that he's kind of pointed to the fact that the green bond program is not the only way that the feds can kind of signal their support for the industry. I know you mentioned SMRs. Can you speak specifically about how important this framework is for the green bond and essentially how significant of a role it can play in the overall, in sort of the overall space?
I'd like to just add a little bit of comments and answers to that question, and we'll let Dr. Keefer answer afterwards. And we talk about the different ministers in that cabinet and their either open disdain for the industry or somewhat talking around the issue. There's the Liberal environmental minister that has never met with anyone from the nuclear sector. And if you have the IPCC saying that you need to have nuclear in the mix, and unfortunately this environment minister won't even pick up the phone to talk to any person in that sector, I think we have a problem. We have a problem with this environmental minister, and we have a problem with this government ignoring the nuclear possibilities in this country. And I'll let Keefer, Dr. Keefer add to that response.
Sure. Again, I think it's important that I kind of explain who I am here. I'm an emergency physician. I'm a volunteer. I do this out of a sense of civic duty. And my organization is entirely volunteer. We have no paid staff, just to kind of clarify that a little bit for you. But again, there's this contradictory approach. I'm very glad that Minister Champagne has been, providing some funding for advanced reactor concepts, but you can't have this kind of contradictory policy. It just doesn't make sense, and it sends the wrong signals. And there is a huge interest in green finance. I mentioned the EU Sustainable Finance Taxonomy. Bruce Power, that's Canada's largest, well, it's the world's largest operating nuclear plant, which provides an enormous amount of carbon-free energy for Ontario. They put out a green bond just last year, and it was oversubscribed by 6 times. It was a $500 million bond. They got over $3 billion of interest in it. So, international finance, patient capital, pension funds, again, the infrastructure builders are ready to enter into the sector. And it is the ultimate economic stimulus. Every dollar spent returns $1.40 to the Canadian economy. So we don't have infinite resources. We've been spending a lot, and we've had to because of COVID, et cetera. But we need to really follow the evidence, follow what works, and we have evidence of what works with the Ontario coal phase out.